Denis Villeneuve is a director that's been catching my attention in recent years. I've only seen two of his films, Prisoners and Arrival, but I plan on seeing the rest of his filmography, which includes Enemy and Sicario. He has this crisp, almost David Fincher-esque style, and in my opinion is a genius with lighting. I decided to watch the first Blade Runner for the first time before going into Blade Runner 2049. Overall, it's a great movie. Some scenes are a bit too exposition heavy for my taste and some sections drag, but these are minor complaints. The special effects look fantastic by modern standards. I could barely imagine how amazing they looked back in 1982. The cinematography is surprisingly modern looking. If it weren't for the film grain and dated audio, you could pass this off as a movie released in the late 90s or 2000s. I only saw the movie on DVD, so maybe it looks better on Blu-ray. The film is extremely well directed. The actors give just enough of a hint of emotion that you can't immediately tell whether they're replicants or real humans. The film is thematically rich, exploring subjects like what it means to be human, religion, and even environmentalism. It's always fun to see how old movies try to predict the future, like how Back to the Future thought we'd have flying cars, barcode license plates, hoverboards, and 19 Jaws sequels in 2015. 2019 is less than 2 years away and we're still centuries away from flying cars and simulated humans. If I had to make a movie with flying cars and other futuristic stuff, I'd set it 500, if not at least 1,000 years from now. Despite this, the universe the film creates feels very palpable and real. I can't really imagine a crew having worked on this. All I see is the final product, and when a movie does that, I'd say it's doing something special. Overall, great movie, and in my opinion, Blade Runner 2049 is even better than the first. It's a good thing I saw the first Blade Runner before going in, because the story intertwines with the events of the first film beautifully. 2049 has a great mystery premise, and I really don't want to spoil anything because you really should just go see these movies for yourself. The film is a bit slower than the first one, but if slow movies don't bother you, it shouldn't be a problem. Let's talk about the technical stuff. The movie looks fucking amazing. Like, holy shit. This is the best looking movie I've seen in theaters in a long time, and is one of the best I've ever seen in my life. The set design and lighting are especially outstanding and inspired. The music is incredible. The film's soundtrack ranges from ambient to industrial sounding. It fits the visuals perfectly, and sometimes you can't tell right away if the sounds you're hearing are the soundtrack or sounds coming from within the film's universe. Like the original, I can't really imagine a crew having worked on this because it's all executed so beautifully. If I had to describe this movie in one word, it would be enormous. If possible, watch this on the biggest, highest definition screen you can, with the best sound system you have. There's not a single weak performance. If some characters seem a little unemotional, it's because they're supposed to be in the film's universe. Any complaints I have with the film are minor things. Without spoiling anything, one character discovers a clue, and another character is like, hey, that same clue is on the bottom of your old wooden horse, but the character was already going to go to the location and find the wooden horse for himself anyway. I think it would have been better if they had eliminated those 3 or 4 lines of dialogue and had the character discover the clue at the same moment as when he found the wooden horse. The first film had a gratuitous Coca-Cola product placement, and so did 2049, but since Sony was one of the production companies on this film, there are some gratuitous Sony product placements as well. It's not so much a flaw as it is a little distracting. Also, there's one scene by the ocean and the tide keeps rising very quickly, and I'm like, does the Los Angeles tide really come in that fast? Don't get me wrong, the positives greatly outweigh the negatives. I was absolutely 100% pleasantly surprised by this film, and I would be shocked if it wasn't in my top 5 at the end of the year. If you go in totally blind, you should be able to follow it, but I highly recommend watching the first movie beforehand for some context. I give Blade Runner 2049 a 9 out of 10. Now to talk about the other movie I saw this week, My Little Pony, the movie. Look, I've uploaded this video with the full knowledge that no matter what I do, this video is going to get a ton of dislikes. If I say anything positive about the movie, everyone is going to call me a clopping brony fanboy. And if I say anything negative about the movie, all the clopping brony fanboys are going to call me a hater. Let me talk about the show real fast. I don't consider myself a brony even though I have seen some episodes of Friendship is Magic. For the record, I didn't discover it on my own. A lab partner in college introduced me to it because he was wearing a shirt with a pony on it. I haven't seen every episode, but I've seen enough from each season that I have a good idea of what the show is all about. I personally don't like the first few seasons, but the series does get better as it goes along. Overall, it's fine. It's a fine show. It's not the most amazing thing ever like some would leave you to believe, and it's not cancer like others make it out to be. Considering it's a show aimed at 5-year-old girls, this is the best show aimed specifically at that demographic I've ever seen. The strongest aspects of the show are its good voice acting, relatively complex plots for a little kid show, and character arcs that span multiple episodes. You can tell a lot of effort was put into it, the creators have respect for their audience, and it doesn't feel cynically pandering at all. Although, let's be honest here, Equestria Girls sucks ass. Regardless of your stance on the show, you gotta admit Friendship is Magic is a massive improvement over the borderline cringeworthy previous incarnations of the franchise. So how does the movie hold up? It was okay, I guess. The animation is kind of reminiscent of the SpongeBob SquarePants movies, where it's a little different from the TV show, and the cinematography is more traditionally cinematic, but it still captures the same style and spirit of the show's universe. Out of the 6 songs featured in the film, at least half of them move the plot forward in one way or another and aren't just there to pad things out. The female villain pony has a decent amount of depth to her character, although she does have the generic scar over one eye that every villain seems to have these days. This seems to be a movie designed for people already familiar with the series, since little is done to develop the main 6 or establish the world of Equestria. The dialogue in the show was fairly timeless, but the dialogue in the movie is more modernized, which felt a little weird considering it's directed by a guy who's directed a bunch of other MLP stuff, so you'd think he'd try to keep things consistent. The cat character kind of felt like a Puss in Boots ripoff at first, that is until he opened his mouth. I can't say I was expecting that voice to come out of that character. I know the Friendship is Magic universe has other nations comprised of other species besides ponies, but this character really felt like a move to appeal to the furry demographic as well as the bronies. Why did the bird pirates still have all their pirate stuff aboard their ship? They presumably got employed and their vehicle had to fit regulations, right? This movie ends Zootopia style with a song no one's gonna remember by Sia, whose character is designed to look just like her. Since I've compared this movie to the SpongeBob movie earlier, one point I want to bring up is that this movie doesn't have much of an emotional center. Now you're probably thinking, what emotional scenes did the SpongeBob movie have? Well, you watch the scene where SpongeBob and Patrick are quote unquote dying under the drying table of Shell City and tell me you don't get it at least a little teary-eyed. The best family movies are the ones that aren't afraid to treat their audience members like thinking adults, regardless of their age. Half the MLP fan base is 25-year-old males. You might as well give them something more. If you or your children are really die-hard fans of the franchise, go knock yourselves out. The theater I saw this movie at was pretty much entirely comprised of children under 6 and their mothers. Unfortunately, the film doesn't offer much to entice the average moviegoer, so for this reason, I give My Little Pony, the movie, a 5.5 out of 10. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go throw some telephone poles and drink some Guinness to reclaim what little manhood I have left.